What's up, Dealmaker Nation? We are live once again for another incredible show. With me in a second is going to be Josh Hines. Josh Hines, if you don't know Josh Hines, you got to stay tuned for this show. If you're trying to escape the 9 to 5 and get out of the grind, well, let me tell you, tonight, Josh Hines is going to tell you exactly how he did that in just a few short years. A few years ago, he was working in medical research, doing the grind, working the office job. He left that to start real estate investing. He started flipping houses, did a couple of deals, then recently branched into wholesaling. He's been scaling up like none else, doing 10 plus flips per month. So today on tonight's show, he's going to be talking to us about how he did that, the whole process, the wins, the losses, the challenges, the lessons learned, everything coming to you live right after this. All right, welcome to the show, Josh.
Robert, Brittany, thanks for having me, guys. That was a great intro.
Yeah, we have the one and only Brittany Rose, head of the Baltimore Dealmaker Nation chapter. Thanks so much for co-hosting, Brittany, once again.
Of course, I'm really excited to dig in.
Awesome. So, Josh, I was at a mastermind with you and I think like probably a dozen of the top investors in the country. Like, it was absolutely incredible. It was hosted by John Martinez, his psycho mastermind. We rented this, what was it, like a 17,000 square foot house.
Humongous.
Yeah, right on the lake in the Ozarks. It was absolutely incredible. I'd never been in a room with so many smart people. Like everyone in that room was like a millionaire or multimillionaire running a really successful real estate investing business. I met you and you told me the story of how you escaped 9 to 5. And I remember you telling me that story. I was like, man, I got to get you on the show. I got to get you to share that story, how you went from 9 to 5 to your first deal, to your first few deals, and now wholesaling, 10 flips or say 10 wholesale deals per month. So why don't we start with that? How did you get into real estate investing? What made you interested in it? And how do you move from the 9 to 5 job to doing your first deal?
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. So I actually went to some seminar. I think it was, who was it? I forget. Back when I was in college, when I was 18, and this was like in 04 and, pre-bubble kind of times. And I actually got approved for a no income stated loan for $740,000. And the banker called me in and he's like, hey, kid, just come in. You're approved. But, I want to sit down and talk to you. And he was just like, you got approved for 740. How do you plan to spend it? And I said, sir, honestly, I have no idea yet. I was at a seminar and they told us to do it, right? And he's like, all right, well, you're approved, but don't go out and buy something you get foreclosed on, right? And I said, okay. I never took action back then, but I always knew I wanted to. So then forward probably 10 years, and my wife became a realtor. Yeah. She was following a different career path and then didn't like it. And she said, what should I do? And I said, well, I think you should get into real estate because I've always wanted to, right? And I have a full-time job. I don't need another job, but I think you should. And she did. And she already had her master's degree in education and went on to become an assistant to this rock star realtor. And that put her on the fast track. So she was her assistant for like 3 months, but then got licensed as a realtor, then joined her team as a realtor, and then went out on her own, went to Redfin. But anyway, she found us our first deal and she's like, I think we should buy this. It was like a penthouse condo. And she said, it's a really good deal. And I looked at it and I just hated it. And she said, trust me, it's a good deal. And it like went under contract and we lost it and then it came back and we ended up buying it. But long story short, 6 months from close to close that we bought it. And then another 6 months later, we had fixed it up and sold it. And we profited $35,000, $40,000 just on that one deal. And that gave me the bug to get back in. And so kind of after that, the rest was history. She was an agent. And 4 or 5 years ago, we were still finding decent deals to flip on the MLS. And so we found deal number 2, 3, I think through probably 10 on the MLS, and then started finding deals from other wholesalers. Finding deals and then paying some big fees to wholesalers kind of led me back to some of my previous knowledge. And I was like, wait a minute, why did that guy get paid $26K the day I started this work? Right. And so that kind of like reopened my ears back to the wholesaling world. My wife and I ended up doing something like 25 flips in the first 2 years, and then completely transitioned over to wholesaling. And this is our second full year, just wholesaling only. So that's the short story to it.
Wow, incredible. So it's almost like you wanted to like get into real estate. Well, you weren't ready to escape the 9 to 5. You wanted to have that security. So you're like, let me live vicariously through my wife.
Yeah, definitely.
And she got your first deal, and that was an MLS deal, right? She found it on the MLS?
It was, yeah.
Wow.
And so we had done, I don't know, I think we were on our maybe second flip or so when I quit my job. And I'll never forget, I was cold calling back in my home office. I worked a sales job, right? So I had time after. And so every day from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m., I was just cold calling on Mojo. And I just hear... And I'm like, hello. And she's like, yeah, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm cold calling. What's going on? And she goes, quit your job. And I said, when? And she goes, right now. And I said, what do you mean? And she was pregnant with our second kid. And I was like, quit my job? What are you talking about? And she goes, you can pick up the phone and make like $20K on a deal. You should quit your job and just do more of that.
That's incredible.
Wow. Okay. Well, so it took me like another like probably 2 or 3 months to actually like, man up and quit. But, that was kind of the spark. And then she left her job like 4 months after that.
Wow, that's incredible. The funny thing too is like a lot of times when there's a spouse and there's like the one entrepreneur, it's usually the spouse like, no, don't do the risky thing. Yeah. But I love how she was pushing you and trying to make you more entrepreneurship. If she hadn't done that, do you think you would have been where you are today?
Oh, definitely not where I am today. Definitely not. Because I mean, to be clear, where I am today has been the product of 3 or 4 years of hard work, consistent work behind this. And so if I would have delayed by another year or something, I would probably still be suffering right now, right? But, I've really had a lot of success this year just because of the hard work we put in behind this. But no, I definitely would not have been where I am right now. That's for sure.
Wow. Incredible.
So what are the changes that you've made over the years? What have been like the biggest, most impactful things that you've learned and how have you grown from? I mean, you've experienced some crazy growth in just a couple years. How can other people duplicate that?
So once we went full time into wholesaling, I had this shift. And to me, then it's not about the actual house. It's not about the property. It's not about the real estate. It's not about the precise real estate knowledge. It's more about marketing and sales. And I think people who are trying to acquire more wholesale deals need to understand that. They need to get a better marketing background and they need to get a better sales process. Thanks for that, Marcy. I appreciate it. But you need to get a better marketing and sales process. And so for me, it was becoming a hyper specialist in marketing and sales, and then delegating everything else. So over the past 2 years, I've, like Robert mentioned, we met at a mastermind. And why was I there? Why did we pay, I don't know, 4K or 5K for a few days to go? Just to level up with other people and to find some of those small little, small hinges swing big doors. So to find some of those small little tactics. But really, I became a hyper specialist in marketing and sales. So that's the short answer to that.
Yeah, and I think that's really the key differentiator between the guys that are just doing this, like, the mom pop shops that are doing 5 deals a year, and the guys that get to 100+ deals per year, right? The guys that are doing 100+ deals per year, they realize that it's not a real estate investing business as much as it is a sales and marketing business. Like, I remember the first company I worked for, it was a mess. They were doing some wholesale deals, a lot of flips. They were doing development. They were doing condo conversions. They had a portfolio of properties. They had their fingers in every single pie. And when you're trying to do everything, nothing gets done well. And what happens, you see that on your bottom line. You end up not making any money at all. But when you stay super focused, especially super focused on wholesaling, you just really get good at the fundamentals, like what you're talking about, sales and marketing. That's when things really take off. So great insight there, Josh. I've heard this from so many guys, all the big players. You got to focus on the sales and marketing. It's all about that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's simple, but it's not easy, right? You have to make it into a simple, repeatable process. And I think some of the things that you can do to make that an easier process are A, know your market really well, B, know how to offer really well, and then C, have some really good buyers, build some really good relationships of people that when you send them a deal, they're going to give you a yes or a no. They're not going to haggle with you a bunch. They're not going to say, well, I need to walk through 3 times. I need to send my contractor over. When you've built that kind of relationship with a buyer or repeat buyer, generally, at least my buyers just say, yeah, it's a deal, send it to me, or no, I'm not up for that one. So just some of the simple things that you can make your business more repeatable are, finding some really good cash buyers and simplifying a lot of things. Got
you. Now, kind of piggybacking off of this, you've talked a lot about how you're all about the 80-20 principle in everything you do. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Maybe explain the 80-20 principle for anybody that hasn't heard of it and why it's so important to your success.
Yeah, absolutely. So, if you get 100 customers, there's going to be 20, or if you get 100 leads, let's say, there's going to be 20 of those leads that are worth 80% of your overall revenue out of that pool. There's going to be 1 or 2 that are worth just as much as the next 8 to 10 deals, right? And so if you could find those 20 out of 100 with precision each time, do you think that would make a difference in your business? For me, the answer is yes. And that's why we really started focusing on finding those top 20 deals out of every 100, or finding that top 20% out of whatever lead pool you have. And so when I started to realize that, I think things started to really improve. And so, how we've kind of put that into application is in our sales process and how we're qualifying leads. And I think that we can pull motivation out of almost any lead in 4 to 5 minutes. When I first started in the business, I would make these dumb mistakes. I would have 45-minute conversations with someone about the property condition and all these things that ultimately didn't matter because I didn't even know their motivation. I didn't know how much they wanted. I didn't even know if they were motivated to sell to someone like me, right? So when we kind of flip the questions around and stack them in a different way, I think we started to have more meaningful conversations up front, not waste our time, and then be able to spend all that time that we saved on the important leads. So really spend our time, talent, and treasure on that top 20% and really put the rest on follow-up, right? So instead of calling every lead in your database like equally, I wouldn't just go down the line and dial every single lead every single day. That wouldn't make sense.
Yeah.
Instead, we have a sales board. Each of my acquisitions guys has a top 25 sales board. So we have 25 of our top leads, and we're focused on those, and everyone else is not getting, they're not getting to everyone else until those top 25 are up to date, and we're really, on track with where we need to be with those. So focusing on those top leads has definitely been really, really impactful for us.
Awesome. That makes a lot of sense. And you mentioned that motivation was those motivation kind of questions that you're asking to really understand if this is a qualified lead for you. What are those questions? How are you stacking them? How did you discover them? What are the resources you use to come up with those questions? Dig into all of that.
Yeah, that's really good right there. So this seems kind of too simple to be true, but don't dismiss it, right? So I learned this from several people, but Tom Kroll from Wholesaling Inc. is the one that talked about this first question. He said, how do you find motivation from one of your leads? Do you go up to him and say, sir, how motivated are you? No, you would never do that. You're not going to get a good answer. But he said, I'll tell you what, there's one thing that correlates with their motivation, and it's timeline. And so I really took that to heart and started using it. And so now, once I get someone on the phone, ask them how their day is going, my first question always to them is, Mr. Seller, if we can line up on the dollar signs and all of the other important details, what kind of timeline is ideal for you to finalize a sale? And that is a super, super important question because they don't know you're asking them how motivated they are, but that's exactly what you're asking. And from that question, you're only going to get basically 2 buckets of answers, right? The first is going to be no timeline. You called me. Next year, maybe, I don't have to sell. I just wanted to hear your offer. If you hear that, do you think they're motivated? Not a chance. But the other real bucket of answers that you're going to hear is as soon as possible, today, tomorrow, next week, this month, next month, right? There's really no in between for us when we ask that question. So that's the first question that is super important that my whole team asks right up front. Again, it's just, Mr. Seller, if we can line up on the dollar signs and all of the other important details, what kind of timeline is ideal for you to finalize the sale? Super simple, but super effective. I have not talked to many other people who were asking that as like their first question. So right there, we're just finding out motivation up front. And then the second question is just like, well, it seems like a really nice house, a nice block. Why the heck would you think about selling it now? And the people who are super motivated are not only going to have a defined timeline, but they're going to have a defined reason, right? They're going to say, I don't know, my tenants suck. I got to move. My grandkids moved and I want to be near them. I need money. I got a notice of default, whatever it may be. They have this concrete reason. And so with those first two questions, it takes me like literally a minute. And so if someone has a definitive timeline, a definitive reason, those green light, I'm seeing those green lights and we're like really diving deep with them. Conversely, if someone doesn't have any timeline and they have no reason, kind of know they're a tire kicker. And we'll ask them the other questions lightly, but we don't spend too much time on them. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. So how have you trained your staff? First of all, how did you find your staff? I mean, you do a lot of virtual wholesaling. You obviously have to have an incredibly capable staff that you can rely on. How are you finding these people? How did you grow your team, especially in such a short amount of time? What are the systems and the processes that you put in place to make sure that they're, maximizing their potential and the dollars that you're paying them? And, just dig into all of that.
Sure. Yeah, that's really good. Team building is something that I really, really enjoy, but it has also been like the hardest piece so far that I kind of underrated. I have a few great guys that work with me now, still a really small team. I only have one other acquisition guy, one disposition guy. And then I think we have 3 or 4 VAs. And then my wife runs all the marketing and deploys all that marketing. So team building has been admittedly really hard. I've turned through several guys in acquisitions. And honestly, I think it's because they don't have the work ethic that I do. And they probably couldn't meet my expectations. But that's perfectly fine. I think the biggest thing for me when I'm going to hire is hiring for attitude and also values. Because that's something that you just can't teach, right? If someone has a bad attitude but the right skills, that's going to be a painful experience for you at your company because they're not going to fit you culturally. Yeah. And so I think values is like the second one. And so I want someone that's honest. I want someone that's a hard worker, but I want someone who has two-way communication and can be honest with me. If they think I'm doing something wrong, right, I want to be open and honest about that. So team building's been very hard so far. I am still working to get better every day. And actually, I just messaged my buddy Gary Harper last night, who I hope to meet up with at the upcoming Investor Fuel. And that's what they really specialize in, is a lot of team building stuff with Sharper Solutions, hiring, but then also they do the PI, predictive index, I believe. And so that's supposed to help with hiring a lot. So hopefully that will definitely help in the next few stages.
Awesome.
And you mentioned, sorry, go ahead.
In terms of like training and stuff, this is super, super important. That especially in sales, you're working on your role playing all the time. And so this is something we probably do every other day where I'm like, hey, give me that first and second line again. Like, tell me exactly what you said and we'll tweak like a small word, right? And so people may not think it's that serious for one word here or, a tonality there. But those are the small things that I found that are very big in our success, or even when we lose a deal or something doesn't work out. I think there's always something in the tone or in the script that could be a little bit better. So we're always working on that. And I try to keep a really, really positive, upbeat mood and culture around here. And I think that's one of the things that we've done pretty well so far.
Yeah. I think you hit. Go ahead.
Sorry. I just want to go back to what he was saying about marketing, because it sounds like you have your wife like solely or mostly dedicated to marketing. What are the marketing strategies that you're using that you're seeing the most success with?
The most success, I would say my long-term one has been cold calling. That's what I've always been good at. And I've kind of brought people up around me that have followed in that, right? So I've trained people that are good at cold calling. I've been good at cold calling. And so therefore I can help teach the rest of my team how to be good on the phone. So I think that's been number one. The biggest up and comer for us is definitely pay-per-click. And so I'm fortunate that my wife is my secret weapon in that, because when she learns something, she just like takes a deep dive into it and will become an expert in like 2 months.
Love it.
And so since August, our pay-per-click has been really, really good. And she did the same thing with us for SMS like 2 years ago. We weren't doing it yet. And we went to our first Investor Fuel Mastermind meeting, and they were like, you got to be, texting people right now. And so in the process of like a week, she had the process down. We hired someone and started to scale that. But, I think pay-per-click is probably the newest and hottest for us.
Yeah.
But the biggest consistent one has been cold calling for sure.
Absolutely. Old, but good. But yeah, PPC, I mean, the great thing about PPC is you have that intent, it's instead of being outbound, it's inbound. Those people are searching like how to sell my inherited house fast for cash, right? So it's super high intent. Closing those is so much easier. Like what I'm seeing on the Investor Lift network is across the board, the average team is closing 1 in 33 leads. But then those teams like Nick Perry's team, that's 100% PPC, they're closing 1 in 10. Which is absolutely incredible. His cost per lead is like $80. So it costs him $800 to get a deal, and he's making like $20K on it. So absolutely incredible. Now, I wanted to dive into something this is like a big transition that we're having in our industry, especially since COVID. Since COVID really hit, it was already starting. It's been like creeping along for a few years. But really in the last few months, there's been this huge shift to virtual. I saw Jerry Green just jumped on. What's up, Jerry Green? Jerry Green was like one of the OG virtual wholesalers. Like he's been doing it for years, maybe even decades, right? Now, what I found interesting is a lot of guys that I'm talking to, they're getting into virtual because they're trying to expand into other markets, right? If my market isn't that great, but there's this other market a few hours away that is like super on fire, I want to be able to do deals there, but I don't want to have to drive there. So that's really been the reason. But what's interesting about your business is you're focused in Baltimore, you're based in Baltimore, but you're virtual wholesaling in Baltimore. So walk me through that. Why did you make that choice? Do you think that what are the pros and cons to that? And what made you decide to go virtual in your own market?
So I've always invested very heavily in my own education. Gone to a lot of boot camps, gone to a lot of masterminds, obviously. And just knew I needed to really up my skills on the phone even more from what they were. And so at the beginning of this year, it was just kind of a coincidence, but we ended up going to Rafael Vargas's boot camp, met Steven Morales, super dude. And he just, I think put a few of the final little tweaks in place for us, so to speak, and just made that complete process. But then COVID hit. We went there in January to learn a few things. And at that point, virtual was like a nice to have, where if we could close it on the phone, we would. But if they were like, oh, come out for the appointment, we would definitely go do that too, right? But then COVID hit. And I saw people in our own market. People were like, oh, crap. Now I just got to sit at home and do nothing, stopping all my marketing. Right. I'm not talking to any lead. And I'm like, what the hell are you guys doing? And so we doubled down just slamming the phones. Yeah. And it was kind of just like it forced us to do that, because people were like, no, I can't do anything right now. And I'm like, well, what if I didn't have to even see the house? Do you have a few pictures of it? And we made it work, right? So COVID really like forced that for us this year. But it was the best thing that could happen for our business, because we went from January did 3 deals, February 0 deals, then March 7 deals, and it's been up since then. But it really forced us to come up with a sales process. Yeah. And my sales process has gotten so dialed in just because of COVID. It's just like these steps that go in a line, right? These things that always happen. I know these things work. When someone calls in and they say this is what we say. And so COVID just really like kind of forced our hand on it. But it's been such a blessing in the business, in the growth of our business.
I love that. And now, are you planning to go back at all to regular wholesaling, or now that you're virtual, this is it?
Oh, I'm not going to go sit on stinky couches if I don't have to.
Now that you're virtual, though, are you planning on going to some other markets? Because I know that in Baltimore, one of the issues of Baltimore market, I remember when I was Express, one of the first things we did is we exited Baltimore because the assignment fees were so low compared to Virginia and DC, right? You're looking at like $5,000 to $12,000 assignment fees in Baltimore versus like DC and Virginia, we're getting like 35 average, sometimes up to 100K on an assignment fee on like those smoking hot deals. Are you planning on branching out into other areas in the DMV or into other states, other markets? And what's kind of your rationale, your thought process behind those plans?
Definitely. Oh, we definitely are. I'm not tied to Baltimore. We probably won't even live here forever. I love it. I'm from the Eastern Shore, Maryland, so like 60 miles away. But we're definitely not just hunkered down. It was always my thought process to become hyper specialists, and that was, wholesalers and now virtual wholesalers, and really know our market well. And not just by doing 1 or 2 or 3 deals here a month. I wanted some saturation and to really know that we had our marketing here dialed in, to know that we have our market knowledge dialed in, to know that we have our buyers dialed in. So then if we have those things dialed in here, I think we can take them and rubber stamp them into other markets for sure. But then the icing on the cake this year has been pay-per-click and just seeing how easy you can move into a new market that way. And kind of accidentally in the past few days, we've gotten some out-of-state leads. And I've just reached out to some other people in my network, and we're actually starting to put some deals together that way. So the answer is yes, for sure, moving out of Baltimore. This coming year, we will be moving into and around the DC area. I'm not sure if we'll actually go into DC, but in and around, or around DC at least, for sure.
I love it. Now, with the shift to virtual, like one of the things pre-COVID was that buyers would always be like, hey, I got to see the property before I buy. You would sometimes on those really hot deals move them sight unseen. Now, I've started to see a lot more inventory moving sight unseen on the buyer side. Are you seeing that in Baltimore as well, where buyers are just like, hey, the numbers make sense, like they're good enough that I don't even need to see it? I know you're probably getting 5 other offers on this thing, so I'm just going to move fast and give you my offer now. Are you seeing that in the Baltimore market?
I'll get sight unseen deals done with my really good buyers. So people that are buying 3, 4, 5 properties from us a month over month. Those are the guys that will not even have to see the place. They'll trust my pictures and they'll buy it from there. Other than that, no, not typically. I mean, I've had it happen from time to time. But I think, DC, Northern Virginia is the much hotter market for that, where you're getting multiple offers, especially over list price. So I'm not seeing that too much here, but from when I have my really good buyers, those are the guys that are doing that.
You mentioned your sales process being really dialed in because of COVID. Can you walk us through that? What does that look like? And you also mentioned doing a lot of deals sight unseen. So obviously you're not going to the property, but who's going out to take the pictures, and how does that fit into your sales process and your staffing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start with the first one on sales process. So there's basically, to just from not even knowing the lead, right? Forrest, what's up, buddy? From not even knowing the lead all the way through to a signed deal, I see it as 3 different phases. There's prospecting, there's qualifying, and there's offering. And so prospecting is basically like taking a list and then talking to them, finding out if they're a lead, taking that lead. Then once you have a lead, you're qualifying them. A little bit about the process I explained before, about how we're finding that motivation, finding the top 20% of leads, and then we're offering on those top 20% of leads. Of course, you have sales processes and you have scripts that you go through on all these. Just there's steps that you go through, right? But so we're just going through that 3-step process over and over again, making it a conveyor belt, essentially. So the more leads we get, the more we can qualify, the more we can offer on, and just trying to repeat that cycle as fast as possible. But, with qualifying, we're just basically going through the 4 pillars of motivation, finding out how much motivation they have. And then to your second point, we're sending out a photographer for pictures. We use a site called BPO Photo Flow. And they've been terrific for like $24, $25 and change. They'll take like 40 or 50 pictures within 2 days. And so that's been a game changer for us as well, because we can talk to so many different people a day. We can schedule 3, 4, 5 appointments a day, and then we don't have to go out. We're getting the pictures back, and then essentially can call the person to make an offer if it makes sense after we get all those pictures back. So I think I got both your questions there, but let me know.
Yeah, you did. Are there specific areas that you're buying in? Because, Baltimore is very block by block, and we all know you got to be, knowledgeable, cautious about where you're buying and how that can affect the pricing. So how do you navigate that in a major city that is very block by block? Like, how are you deciding where to buy and who to buy from? Or do you buy everything?
Yeah, that's good. No, we definitely don't buy everything. We'll buy most anything at the right price. But in Baltimore, so we only have a few rules of stuff that we don't buy. And that's those small alley streets where there's no parking on the street and just room for like 1 car. We don't buy anything on those unless it's like Fells or Canton. And then the second thing is there can't be more than 4 board ups on the block. And there can't be a board up on one side or the other of the property that we're trying to buy. So other than that, it can't be an alley street, and you can't have more than 4 board ups on the block, and you can't have a board up next door to that property. Other than that, it's pretty much open. A lot of the stuff, let me mention, one of the products that we go to buy and then sell are turnkey rentals. So stuff where already has maybe a Section 8 tenant in place, or just any tenant, as long as they're paying, right? Most people are not trying to wholesale those, but that's probably 50% of our overall revenue, because we have a lot of out-of-state and also international buyers that we work with that are, putting those in their portfolio and having a passive investment. So that's pretty much, how we're buying in Baltimore.
Awesome. Now, Josh, we got a lot of people watching the show. I just saw messages coming in from Jerry Green, who's like one of the OG virtual wholesalers. I know he was just on your show earlier today. We saw messages coming in from Forrest Blackburn, who was just one deal away from $1 million in assignment fees per month on Tarkel Moose's team in California. A lot of big guys watching the show, but then also a lot of small guys that are probably wondering, how do I get from 1 to 10? How do I get to where Josh is? I always tell people, you got to don't look at the guy that's 10 steps ahead. Look at the guy that's 2 steps ahead and follow them. So for those guys, can you talk a little bit about some of like the biggest mistakes that you've made on your journey from starting out at 0 to 10 deals a month, and what you learned from those mistakes?
Sure, absolutely. So one of the things, I think the biggest mistake that comes to mind, the biggest way I was like putting the brakes on myself, was that I was trying to take everything from the beginning stage in terms of pulling lists, in terms of like real VA tasks that you can outsource. I was trying to do all that, right? I was trying to ask everyone, what are the best lists? Where do I buy them? How do I download them? How do I scrub them? How do I upload them? How do I deploy them, right? How do I track them? And then, how do I then talk to people and then get the deal? But I was trying to do everything myself. And so that was one of my biggest mistakes. So as soon as you can hire a VA to kind of help assist in getting your marketing list together, in scrubbing them for your various channels. And by that, I mean, if you're going to take whatever list and you're going to upload it to your cold caller, you're going to upload different information in different numbers than you are if you're just texting them. You're going to have to scrub down and get mobile numbers only. So that used to be the busy work that I would do for myself. And when all the busy work was done, I had a few hours left to actually talk to people, and it wasn't enough. So when I really was able to step out of that and focus 80% of my time on talking with people, finding motivation, finding how I could solve a problem, my deals started to flow in consistently. So I think if you're not doing any consistent deals, you have to find out what you're actually good at and what you like doing, and spend most of your time doing that and find a way to delegate the rest. So I think getting off the ground, finding out what you're good at and what you like doing, and finding out where that overlaps, and doing more of that and delegating everything else as much as you can. I think that's how you get from 0 deals or inconsistent deals to consistent deals.
100%. Great advice. Yeah, I see this happening with so many entrepreneurs. They're literally trying to do everything in their business. When you try to do everything fails, right? You got to delegate. I remember a few years ago, I sat down with Richard Branson. I asked him, I said, hey, how do you build $1 billion company after $1 billion company? And he said, you got to focus on 3 things. Number 1, craft the vision for your company and just make sure that vision is crystal clear. Number 2, find the best people in the world to go execute on that vision. And number 3, give them all the resources. So I know you can't do that on your first deal or your first 3 deals. Once you've got like a few deals under your belt, like 100%, start off with some VAs, get some VAs working on your team, delegate things, and then move in probably to more local guys for inside sales, outside sales. I guess you're all 100% inside sales. Now, for actually qualifying the leads, it sounds like you're using the VAs specifically for the data tasks. Are you also using them for cold calling, or are you having your US sales reps do that? And have you tried using VAs for cold calling? Because I know some people love it, some people hate it. Really, really depends. So what are your thoughts and experiences on that?
Yeah, we're definitely using VAs to cold call. Let me step back to the original point, your last point really quick though, because imagine how silly it would be. Like, we all go out to eat in restaurants, right? Imagine how silly it would be if you walked into a restaurant and the person that hosted you also like took your, the host took you to your table, but they were also your waiter. And then they went back to the kitchen and they also cooked it. And they also came and got your dishes. And then they also checked you out. right? And then imagine they took your keys and they were the valet too. Like, wouldn't that be completely silly? It would be, but that's how a lot of people are trying to run their upcoming real estate business. They're trying to get it off the ground, right? That way. When you look at it a little bit different way, it's just kind of silly. So anyway, yeah, going back to virtual assistants cold calling. Yes, we do have our virtual assistants are cold calling, and we have virtual assistant lead managers as well. So they're the ones that are calling to do a lot of the qualifying and then pass off the most qualified leads to the inside sales guys. So yeah, we have had a mix of local employees doing cold calling all the way up to acquisitions, and then we've had a mix of virtual assistants doing everything from cold calling to qualifying, and then even giving light offers, right? Just some ranges. But that's always something we're playing with. Currently, we're using a mix of both.
Yeah. Awesome.
And so your system obviously relies on wholesaling virtual assistants or real estate virtual assistants a lot. How are you finding the best real estate virtual assistants, and how are you training them?
That's a really good question too. So this has been a big leap forward for us as well in the past year. So just like anything else, it's a funnel. It's a sales funnel, right? You don't. One mistake that I think people get wrong in trying to hire VAs is putting a job ad out and then getting 50 applicants and then trying to have a Skype interview with each of them. You're just going to get burnt out and you're never going to talk to the best ones. So like most everything I do in my business, it's a funnel. And so when I put that ad up, the ad is talking about our values, the person that we're trying to attract. I'm like describing that person in the copy. But then I talk about, what they will actually be responsible for. And then I give them a task. If you want to apply, write me 2 sentences that describe this. And then so from there, everyone that responds with that sentence, I send a YouTube video to. And the YouTube, it says, hey, thanks so much. You're on to the next round of applications. Follow the instructions on this video. Let me know if you accept. And so that video will ask them to do a small task as well. And then they send it back. And then I actually give them like one more small task. And then if they complete that, we schedule the Skype interview. But it takes it normally from like 50 applications, and then probably 15 will complete that first task. And then probably only 3 to 5 complete that second task and actually get to that stage of interview. But so now you've tested for someone's competency, right? Can they read what I wrote them? Can they actually do what I ask? And then can they do the core competency thing? So in our video, it's asking them to repeat our qualifying script. So I have myself reading, I have a copy of the script for them, but then being Filipino virtual assistants, you can hear if they have any accent, but you can hear their delivery in that speech. You can hear just how good they are. And that's, of course, before you train them. So when I have 3 to 5 people responding back, reading off that script, I then can pick the best 1, 2, or 3 in interview, and I have my pick of the best applications, from there. So using mostly Filipino VAs at this time, but that's our basic process for it.
And where are you posting job applications? What are the best resources you found to find these virtual assistants?
So I know a lot of people use Upwork. I haven't quite found success there yet. I'm using a job site called onlinejobs.ph. And so I'm not, I know it works in hiring for our positions here, but I don't know if you're going for something higher dollar, higher skill. I'm not exactly sure how well that works. But I can tell you I've had some really, really good virtual assistants that have been with me for a year, 2 years plus. That I found on there. And so the process in that site has been really good to me so far.
And then what's your system for training them? Like, do you have it all on Google Docs, or do you use I think there's a system called Trainable. There's a bunch of systems, but what are you using?
I've never been the best at training, but basically what we do, and by that, I don't mean I have this built out system. But what I do have is every time I go through the training process, I use QuickTime to record the video. And I take a good amount of time to teach each task, but I also record it. And so then it becomes repeatable. And now I'm actually compiling all those videos in private YouTube lists and stuff like that. So I can say, okay, this is week 1. Here's what we aim to accomplish. Day 1, go watch this video. And then we're going to chat about this. So really recording the videos as I'm doing the thing with a screen share has been my go-to, and that's been a big game changer for us. When I was I'm not from a disc profile. I'm a DI, and that means I'm big idea, but low on the details and low on the follow through. And so for me, when I was relying on that written process, if it was up to me to do that process, it was just never getting done. But if I could have someone on Skype, or on a screen share on Zoom, then I can walk them through the complete process. I can ask them for questions. They can pick my brain a little bit, and we can record the whole thing. And then they have that for reference, and then I have that for the next employee that comes through for that same position. So that's been the process that we use so far.
Perfect. So what are the tips and tricks to working with virtual assistants, and how did you make the transition in terms of pay, especially going from being just a solo operator to scaling up to a team? Did you reinvest the money? Did you put in your own money? What does that look like?
Yeah, that's good too. This is one thing that I think a lot of people get wrong with hiring virtual assistants. They treat them like an asset. They basically just give them a list and say, do this, let me know when it's done. Do this, call this person, let me know when it's done. I've always treated my virtual assistants just like their team members. We never meet in person, but I always treat them like they matter to me. I always treat them like they're valuable to our company. And so we have weekly huddles with them just to talk about anything. But I'm always just treating them like a person. On their birthday, I'll send them a small gift. For Filipinos, they have a thing called 13th month that I think is only for like government employees over there. But I send them a month's worth of pay at the end of the month, right? At the end of the year, I'm sorry. And so I've always just treated them like real humans, like real team members. And I think that's made a big difference in the longevity. So it's picking the right people up front and then investing in them, but then trying to make sure they stay around. So the average VA for us is stuck around over a year, which is really, really good. Yeah, really good. And in terms of hiring and like how I transition that money, to be honest with you, hiring a Filipino virtual assistant is not expensive. You can hire for as cheap as $3 an hour. But we try to stick in that $5 to $6 an hour range. You're going to find a lot better talent. And I didn't hire my first assistant until after I got my first big wholesale deal. So I think I knocked my first wholesale deal ever, I think, was $22,000 or something like that. And we kept that in the bank and then just started hiring people from that. So,
wow. Awesome. Now I got a question for you. So with the transition to virtual wholesaling, one of the problems I've seen on so many deals is that when teams branch out from their existing market to other markets, or even sometimes within their own market, when they're going from regular deals to virtual deals, or even just starting wholesaling, they have a big problem with getting properties under contract and then not being able to secure a buyer, because they don't have a good buyer's list or they mispriced the property.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a huge problem. I was literally talking to a team last week. They had, I think 70% of the properties that they were putting on contract, they were not closing on.
Wow.
Now, for the business, it's a huge problem because that's 70% of your revenue out the door. But then for our industry, it's super, super bad because you're telling someone, hey, I'm going to buy your house on this date. They're like getting their moving trucks ready. If you don't close on that, that person is not going to be happy. It's not going to put a good, it's not going to be really good for our industry at all when people hear stories about stuff like that happening. So it's been a really big problem. So I wanted to dive into your dispo process. Can you tell us about your dispo process? How does it work? How do you find buyers? How do you vet them? How do you build those buyers lists? And then what does your whole entire dispo process look like?
Sure. That's a good question. So let me reverse engineer that. I think this is what we've done in our business, and I think it's enabled us to be more successful this year. Here's one thing that I think a lot of investors and even wholesalers don't do, right? You've heard the term buy box, right? Well, we've physically drawn that out on our whiteboard, like a big box, and then we have 4 different products basically that we buy and sell. Now, in this buy box, each of those 4 products have specific criteria for them. And so one of the big products that we sell are turnkeys. And so for us, the criteria for those are all in for 50 grand or less. It has to be a decent block, and there's a rent multiple, right? So if it's rented for 1,000, we're trying to get it for something different than if it's rented for 700. But I know that if I stick to my criteria within that buy box, I know without a shadow of a doubt that I have a buyer for it. because I've already talked with the buyers that we had on our list and reverse engineered that. And so it goes for the same for all of the 4 products that we have in the criteria that we need to buy them for. There are some exceptions. I mean, I think we've closed over 90% of the A to B contracts that we've signed. So we've had very little fallout. But I think we started from the end and kind of reverse engineered that. So we know if a property fits within a certain criteria, we know that we can move that rather than just taking a stab at it and trying to find a buyer, right? That's what, nightmares are made of when you first get properties under contract.
Right, 100%.
So in terms of, buyers on your list, you want to find buyers that are already doing deals in your market. So you want to start your foundation just with some really solid buyers and then start to expand. We can talk about some of that expansion a little bit, but it's really important to have, a good 10, 15, 20 buyers to start out with that are actual buyers, not someone trying to come in and daisy chain your deal.
Yeah. And do you have a process that you use to find those buyers?
Yeah. I mean, so, how we started out is just scraping public records, scraping prop stream to find people who are those cash buyers. We do work with some JV partners, but one of my most successful channels this year for finding new buyers is actually posting our real deals on Craigslist. And we put information on Craigslist about the property, all real information. And then right after that, it says to find out more or to make an offer, call this number. And that is actually an answering service. We made that switch in, I think, February or March, and we've been adding over 100 buyers a month to that. And then, so this is an answering service that has a script specifically for buyers. And it's just like, what property are you calling about? Are you calling to make an offer, schedule an appointment, or make an offer, right? And then if we brought you your perfect deal, how many are you looking to buy in the next 3 months?
Yeah.
Will this be cash or hard money? And so we're asking these qualifying questions for buyers. Once we get those back in, we're calling to make personal connection with them and really dig a little bit deeper. But that's how we've really started to ramp up our buyers list. Just put out real deals and then have the answering service filter a lot of those calls, because you can kind of scale indefinitely if it's not just ringing to your cell phone.
I love it. So great tip there. If you want to build a buyers list, just send out some real deals, and the real buyers they'll come and find you. And I'm sure you're probably posting a lot on the Dealmaker Nation groups, things like that. That's obviously an awesome resource, I'm sure, for finding buyers. Have you been able to tap into that at all? If so, have you had some success?
Oh yeah, we post all around Facebook. I think Facebook postings have been a little bit controversial for us. Not in any bad way, but once you start putting them out there, we found that once we post them on Facebook, there's just a ton of daisy chainers that take over. And so we pulled back from that a little bit, but we just had way too many people taking I had a deal earlier in the year, single family home. I was asking $110,000 for it. And it ended up on some Florida wholesalers list that he blasted out to a bunch of people for $175,000. Yeah, seriously, like the price had gone up 50%, and we had never told him he could market it.
The funniest is when you see it on the MLS, and it's on the MLS, and then like some wholesalers trying to wholesale for like 50 grand more.
Yes, exactly. So we have posted on Facebook a bunch this year. We're trying to refine the process for how we do that currently. I was just talking with my dispo guy, Stu, today about that. So Facebook for sure is a terrific resource to find new cash buyers as well. But we've just found that when you're posting specific deals with the price and address and everything, it's too easy just to lift that and like put it in your email.
Right. Yeah. One of the things we're doing on Investor Lift right now is we're building a national real estate investing / wholesaling blacklist. So whenever like someone gets caught doing something like that, they're banned from all the Investor Lift sites. They don't get any deals anymore. So we're working. It's a tough problem to solve.
Yeah.
But we're trying to find a solution. We're working on it. Hopefully we'll get there. It's going to take some time though.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there needs to be something like that, right?
Yeah.
There needs to be some way that this person has been very, very bad to me. Not just a little rude, but like very, very bad and detrimental.
The other thing I've been thinking about, let me know your thoughts on this, is how ultimately we're a network, right? We're a two-sided network. You have wholesalers and you have flippers, and you're trying to do an exchange in the middle. It's almost like Airbnb or Uber, right? You have drivers, you have riders, you have renters, you have people that want to rent, right? So I've been thinking about this. I'm like, we almost need like like a feedback system, because the way they get rid of bad riders or bad drivers is that feedback system. You take an Uber ride, you score them 1 to 5. You go to an Airbnb, and if the place is a disaster, you let them know in the comments. And guess what? That after a few bad comments, that place is not going to be rented anymore. So I've been thinking about this, and like I think it's something that possibly I'll add to InvestorLift soon, so that when people see like, hey, this is a bad actor on either side, they know. I don't know. What are your thoughts? Do you think that would be useful, Josh?
It would be super useful. The only thing that I see that could be hard with that is there's so many people that hop in and hop out of what we tend to do, right? There's like, now I was just talking about people daisy chaining, but there's so many people that, you know, can try to take your deal and then send it to some new list, and they just started. So there's a lot of people coming and going, a lot of fly by night kind of stuff. But if you could somehow nail that, I think that'd be super successful.
Yeah, 100%. Awesome. All right, so we got 8 minutes left. Before we wrap up here, I know, Brittany, you probably have a few more questions. But before we wrap up here, I wanted to give a shout out to a couple of things that you've been working on for real estate investors, some free resources. The first thing I want to do is mention your deal site. So you have a deal site. Could you let us know exactly what the URL is for your deal site for anyone that's looking for cash deals and wants to register for your buyers list?
Oh, for mine, it's cashflowinbaltimore.com. Cashflowinbaltimore.com.
Awesome. I'm going to post that down in the comments here. All right. So guys, if you're looking for deals, go to cashflowinbaltimore.com to check out all of Josh's deals. And then you also run a Facebook group. The Facebook group, I believe, is called Lead Gen Underground, which is, I guess, 100% dedicated to lead generation strategies for real estate investors. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm super passionate about lead generation, about marketing, about sales, right? And so this is something for me that was just kind of a passion project. One day I had a few friends and I was like, man, if I started this group all around lead gen, marketing, sales, that's something you'd be into? And they're like, oh, for sure. And so I went out on, created a kind of on a whim. And now we have, I think we started in January and we have well over 1,000 people now. It's all real estate professionals, mostly real estate investors. But we go live weekly with someone else talking specifically about lead gen strategies, about marketing, and about sales. And so it's something that I'm super passionate about, because if you can get leads in real estate, then you can make money. And if you can make money, you can run away from your 9 to 5, right? The people that don't make it are the ones that are trying to do everything and don't really know where to find deals. And so, you know, if you can go out and you can find people that want to sell and you can find people that you can help, you're going to be able to create some deal flow for yourself. You're going to be able to definitely leave your 9 to 5 and start your own thing. So something I'm super passionate about. I love running the group. I love bringing that knowledge to other people. And I love when people send me messages and they're like, oh my God, the person that you had on, this person that they just dropped this gold nugget right here, and that helped tremendously. So I love hearing that kind of thing.
Awesome. Awesome. So we're about to wrap up. If you have a question, definitely post in the comments below. We got, once again, Josh Hines on here. We're talking about how he went from 0 to 10 plus deals per month in a very, very short period of time, how he's able to escape 9 to 5. We talked about so many things tonight. We talked about marketing, acquisitions, hiring, training, dispositions. We've just really gone through absolutely everything, but I'm sure there's other questions people have, so post it below. We just got a comment that came in from Eliza. It's actually my wife. She's watching live. You met Eliza last week at John Martinez's event. Yep. She says, what is your favorite marketing channel and why?
Right now, it has to be pay-per-click. Pay-per-click, and we're getting a lot of the one-click dials. So my wife has set up, wife is always a great partner, right, Robert? My wife has set up these pay-per-click ads where we're just doing so much testing with it, but there's one-click dials. And so when my phone rings and it says Google AdWords lead, we're closing like 1 out of 4 of those phone calls that come in. It's just a crazy high success rate. We only get probably, 5 to 8 of those calls per week. But those calls right now are the hottest for us, hands down. So I love when those calls come in.
And I want to
Sorry, go ahead, Brittany. I was going to say
Yeah,
that's the highest close rate I've seen on PPC. So you're crushing it. Great job.
And those are not going to a website. Those are going directly to like the Google call button. Is that what we're saying? Yeah.
Yeah. So when they search for certain terms and then our ad comes up, our number's right there. And there's a feature in Google where you can just one click dial that and it rings right through to my cell phone. There's no answering service. There's no VA. It just comes right to me. And that's where I'm able to work my process on them. But those people just have such high motivation. They say, oh, are you buying houses for cash right now? Yes, I am. Can you tell me the address? And we go right into it. So in 20 minutes, I have their whole story. I have them set up for an appointment for pictures. We're talking about initial price. We're talking about next steps. So those are just the hottest calls because they're so motivated. That person coming in, inbound lead is always going to be hotter than an outbound lead for sure. Just inbound leads can be a lot more expensive. So that's why I think people shy away from it. There's a lot more work to get them, but they're just absolutely the hottest for us in our business.
Wow. Awesome tips there. I gotta test that. I've tested them before in the past, but I didn't have the success you're having. So I definitely got to pull that back into my marketing mix right away. Awesome tip there.
Absolutely.
What are the other resources? I know you mentioned Investor Fuel and a couple others, but what are the other resources that you've gotten the most out of that have like kind of radically changed your business or been the most helpful to you?
Oh, that's really good. I would say just kind of building your network and being around like-minded people who have the mindset that you do for growth. That's not really like a specific thing. But just once I started leveling up and finding other people who wanted something much bigger in life in general, not even real estate, not even wholesaling, but wanted something much bigger out of life. Once I started spending more time with those people, things started to change, right? I think number two, YouTube has been just an excellent teacher for me. I've learned so much through different authors and different videos. For instance, I don't know. I've learned a lot about marketing off there from Dan Kennedy, for instance. Jim Rohn has been really, really good for my mindset. And then I think the last thing has probably been a lot of books. Like I'm an avid reader. Think and Grow Rich was one of those ones that just absolutely changed my life. Oh, and I wanted to bring this up to you guys. I'm an avid reader, but I'm also a browser. I'm not like a cover to cover kind of guy because I tell most stories tend to like cover the same theme like 3 or 4 times. But I came across this like kind of life hack from Russell Brunson. I want to share with you really quick. I call it power reading. It's getting the physical copy of the book and then also getting the audio version of the book and putting that audio version between 2 and 4x. Listen to it while you're reading along. And boy, you can beat up a book in like a couple hours. I'm reading it. When I do that, I'm probably at like 90, 95 pages an hour in terms of reading speed, and the comprehension is really good as well. So that's something that as of late has been a game changer for me. I've been doing more than a book a week, just part-time by doing that.
Well, that's an awesome tip. So what do you think it is about that increases the speed? Is it like, I almost feel like it would be more difficult if you're hearing it and reading it at the same time, but what do you think? Like, how does that work? How does that hack work? What makes it easier?
The first thing that pops to mind is it corrects bad habits. So when I'm reading, I would read, and I would stop and sometimes kind of zone out or go back and reread the last sentence 3 times. Right. When it's coming at you at 2x or 2.5x, you don't have that time. You're just like going on with it. But I think just having it in 2 input mechanisms, right? So you're seeing with your eyes and you're listening to it with your ears.
Yeah.
I think just that combination, it's, at least for me, sinks into my brain a lot faster that way. I don't even need to hear every single word. I don't need to read every single word. If you miss a few, it's okay. But overall, my comprehension has been way better doing this than it was just reading or just listening.
Wow. That's awesome tip there. This has been absolutely incredible. Awesome interview. There's been so many bombs dropped on this interview. Guys, if you're watching this, you're trying to get from 0 to 10 plus deals per month. If you're in that range, you got to watch this, rewatch it, take notes, reach out to Josh. Josh, if people want to reach out to you, how can they get in contact with you? What's the best way?
Yeah, sure. So we'll join Lead Gen Underground.
Yeah.
Or follow me on Instagram, Josh with Impact. That works too. I mean, I think you can even follow me on Facebook or friend me on Facebook. But any of those really work. I try to put a bunch of stuff up on Instagram, try to show kind of behind the scenes some of the stuff that I think about, some of the wild ideas I have. But yeah, connect with me. I'd love to chat.
Awesome. Brittany, any final thoughts here before we wrap up?
Yeah, well, I always have a question. What do you see the future of Baltimore as? Like, where are we going? Where should people be paying attention? What should we all be aware of, seeing as you're so in it?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's one that's really hard to answer. From government perspective and the things that they do, it's kind of, it puts constraints on things. I think the future for Baltimore should be super, super bright. We're right on the water here, a lot of resources. And I think there's a lot of redevelopment going on right now, even from outside money coming in. So I think, over the long term, I think Baltimore improves pretty drastically. In the short term, I'm not sure. In the next, few years, I think there's some sort of downturn coming in terms of real estate. So I'm not exactly sure what that might hold. But the future for Baltimore is bright, especially from an investment perspective. Even if you're a wholesaler or if you're a passive investor, I think the future in Baltimore is really, really bright. And the cash flow numbers here are just insane, right? You can buy a place for $35,000 and it's rented for $1,000 a month. You're not going to find that many other places in the country. So once people start to learn that, I think it's even going to get better.
Wow. Awesome. Thanks for that tip. Josh, this has been absolutely incredible. 1 hour of bomb dropping. I think this was, of all our interviews, I think this was one of the most actionable interviews where you just like laid out your plan or how you did things step by step, how you did acquisitions, what's working for you on marketing, what's not working for you, the sales process. You mentioned things that a lot of people don't really talk about, like tonality on calls, right? Like super important. That's such a high level of skill most people don't think about, but I think really can double the amount of deals you're getting. So many awesome bombs dropped. Talked about the 80-20 principle, all of that. Again, if you're watching this tonight, make sure to join Josh's group, the Lead Gen Underground, free resource for everyone. Josh, we got to thank you for coming on the show. This has been absolutely incredible. Sharing, guys, we're not getting paid for any of this. We're doing this just for our industry, to help people in our industry be better, escape the 95, become millionaires, and just live the life of their dreams that they want to live. So Josh, I got to thank you so much. I'm sure everyone, leave in the comments below if you got value from the show, okay? Show some love down in the comments below. That's how you can show your love. We don't charge anything for this. 100% free content. Josh spent an hour of his time here tonight with us. So absolutely incredible. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Also, one of the things that you got thinking about this a little bit was we're thinking about possibly taking this show and releasing it as a podcast on iTunes. It's going to take some work. I'll probably have to hire the EA to do all the conversions and everything. But we've had a few people asking. You talking about the audiobooks and stuff got me thinking about it again tonight. So if you guys want to see this show, or I guess hear this show in podcast format, let us know below. If there's like 2 or 3 people that want it, I'm not going to do it. But if I got like 20 people that want it, podcast form of this show, definitely leave in the comments below, because we'll go ahead and go make that happen. Because again, we just want to provide as much value to as many people as possible and escape the 95 like Josh Hines has done. So thanks again, Josh, for coming on the show. Brittany, once again, incredible host. If you are in Baltimore, make sure to join the Baltimore Deal Maker group on Facebook. Absolutely incredible resource for anyone in Baltimore. But once again, thanks so much, Josh. Thanks, Brittany. This has been absolutely incredible.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for having me, Brittany. I look forward to finally meeting you in person. Robert, I look forward to seeing you again, buddy.
Yeah, let's grab some beer sometime.
Absolutely.
Guys,
thanks so much. I hope you have a great night.
Thanks.
You too.
Guys, thanks for joining us on the live show tonight. If you're on Facebook, make sure to join our Facebook group. It's facebook.com/DealMakerNation. Tons of great content in that group, tons of great people. Make sure you're joining the community, join the network, and learning from other like-minded entrepreneurs. Also on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to our channel. You can find it at youtube.com/